Hello everyone, welcome to Talking Newspaper for Friday 15th of September. I'm Howard.
And I'm Pauline. And we start today with the Society News. Tuesday, the Dolphins are swimming this Tuesday, the 19th of September in Ryde at the Waterside Pool. The pool is closed to the public whilst the group swims. There are male and female volunteers to help you get in and out of the pool, as well as lifeguards to ensure your safety. To join the Dolphins, please call the Society first to notify us of your swimming ability. Wednesday, the Society Coffee Morning will be held this coming Wednesday, the 20th of September. Come and join us for a cup of coffee and a chat. Why not bring a friend along, as the coffee mornings are open to all. On Wednesday, the 20th of September, from 10 a.m. till 3 p.m, we will also be holding our Low Vision Drop-In Day as part of National Eye Week. We will be joined by Optelec and Orcam, as well as exhibiting our low vision resources that we hold here at the Society. All are welcome to drop in. Parking and refreshments are available. Thursday, the Knitters and Natterers will be meeting at Millbrook House this Thursday, 21st of September, from 10:30 a.m. till 2 p.m. There is helpful knitting at all levels, coffee and chat, and readers that will entertain you in the afternoon. Please note transport may be available to some of the groups, but please call the Society first on 522205. Friday, the Striders group will be meeting this Friday, 22nd of September. The stride will start at Shanklin Railway Station at about 10:35 a.m, with lunch afterwards at Merry Gardens in Lake at 12:30 p.m. Any other news? The bowling group will be meeting at LA Bowl in Ryde on Wednesday the 27th of September at 2 p.m. The cost is £3.95 for 2 games. This group is open to all visually impaired people. Please note there is no transport for this group. And now we'll do the scaffolding news.
This is a list of known footway obstructions for works including scaffolding or hoarding. We're unable to include end dates, as many are extended on a week-by-week basis. Also included are tables and chairs permits that have been issued in the past week. Bay Area, current scaffolds, Lloyds Bank, Regent Street, Shanklin. Scaffolding is due up on the 18th of September at the Carlton Hotel, Esplanade, Sandown. Ventnor Area, current scaffolds, Cliffview, Hamborough Road, Ventnor. Scaffolding is due up on the 18th of September at 36 Victoria Street, Ventnor. Cowes Area, current scaffolds, development site Castle Street, East Cowes, Jam and Sons, Thetis Road, Cowes, Watson Bull and Porter, 8 Ferry Road, East Cowes, 27 Cross Street, Cowes, 4 Alfred Street, East Cowes, Moira House, Sunhill, Cowes. Current hoardings, 272 to 283 Arctic Road, Cowes, 93 High Street, Cowes. Scaffolding is due up on the 28th of September at 3 Bell Cottages, Medina Road, Cowes. Newport Area, current scaffolds, Nippert Court, West Street, Newport, 2 Chapel Street, Newport, 38 Key Street, Newport, 10 to 12 Lugley Street, Newport, 57 Melbourne Street, Newport, Cranbourne Rest, 61 St James Street, Newport, 67 Trafalgar Road, Newport, Mere, 20 St Thomas Square, Newport, 47 Moorview, Godsill. Scaffolding is due up on the 19th of September at 43 Lugley Street, Newport, and on the 28th of September at 34 Caesars Road, Newport. Ryde Area, current scaffolds, St Mary's Church, Ryde, along St Mary's Passage, Oasis Dental Care, 9 Melville Street, Ryde, 77 George Street, Ryde, Sue and So, 30 to 31A Union Street, Ryde, British Heart Foundation, 19 High Street, Ryde, Sea Hill House, Pier Road, Seaview. Scaffolding is due up on the 18th of September at the Old Bakery, the Bullring, Brading, Angels Grace, 71 Union Street, Ryde, and 2 West Street, Ryde. On the 20th of September at Little Bramley, Rope Walk, Seaview. On the 22nd of September at LP's Cafe, Stanfield House, Circular Road, Seaview. On the 26th of September at 99 New Road, Brading. West Wight Area, current scaffolds, Cornerways, the Broadway, Totland, Mulberries, High Street, Yarmouth. This week's In Touch. In this week's edition of In Touch, Nikki Ross talks about her first year as principal at New College Worcester and tells Peter Wight about her plans for the future of the school. Tom Skelton has just finished a run of his new comedy show at the Edinburgh Fringe, in which he focuses on his sight loss and his experience of realising he was going blind during a stage performance.
And now we're reading from the County Press for Friday, September the 15th, and the headline, "She could have done anything." The family of a happy, smiling teenager who was looking forward to starting university next week have spoken of their shock at her sudden death. Danielle Hobson died at the wheel of her car last Tuesday morning, the victim of an undiagnosed heart condition. She'd managed to pull over in Northwood, just a short drive from Mill Hill Road, Cowes, where she lived, and was found in her car by a dog walker returning home. Despite the efforts of neighbours who called an ambulance and tried to resuscitate Danielle, it was too late to save her. She was 18. Danielle's parents, Ian 50 and Bridget 52, had no clue about her heart condition. She had suffered a mitral valve prolapse, where the valve does not close properly, restricting blood flow. Bridget said she was always so healthy and she was so happy that morning. She was working at the Needles arcade during the summer and was happy it was payday. We don't know exactly what happened. She managed to pull over. It must have been very quick because she would call me if she felt ill. She called me all the time, every day. When they found her, she had no heartbeat. She was already gone. Danielle was fun and fearless, a popular girl with lots of friends and a busy social life. She enjoyed visiting Gurnard Beach with her friends and family, sailing with her auntie, Valerie Cause, and after passing her Isle of Wight College course with flying colours, excited about starting a childhood, youth and community studies course at Winchester University. She had previously gone to Cowes Enterprise College. She really knuckled down and worked hard. She was so determined. Once she decided to do something, she did it, said Bridget. All her uni things are packed and in her room, new bedding, books, a sandwich toaster. She was so organised. An adventurous girl, Danielle celebrated her 16th birthday with a skydive and her 18th with a cruise to Bruges with Valerie. She's enjoyed scuba diving in Cyprus and during a Florida holiday with her parents and sister Shannon, 20, swimming with dolphins. Ian said she could have done anything in life she wanted to do. Danielle loved children and volunteered at Cowes Community Youth Work, part of Isle of Wight Youth for Christ, having attended since she was 11. Simon King, who runs the group, said she had a very strong faith. She came to all our events. She loved the support and encouragement of a close group of friends. It's so tragic. She had her whole life ahead of her. We will miss her hugely. Danielle also volunteered at the Isle of Wight Food Bank. Ian and Bridget praised the St Mary staff who looked after them and gave them a treasured memories box containing her handprint and a lock of hair, a candle, teddy bears and seeds to plant in her memory. Danielle's funeral will be held at the Isle of Wight crematorium on Thursday at 10:30 a.m, followed by a celebration of her life at the Woodvale, Gurnard. Donations can be made to the Make-A-Wish Foundation, as Danielle loved children.
A controversial housing development in Cowes could be about to get even bigger. Developers at Place Road are looking to increase the number of properties on the site, Cowes Mayor Councillor Paul Fuller said. There is currently permission for 86 dwellings, but developers may request permission for 99. Councillor Fuller met the developers last month and told Cowes Town Council last week applying for additional permission would allow builders to take a fresh look at the impact of existing homes in Place Road and Tuttons Hill. Councillor Fuller said, before submission of any application, developers have asked me to arrange a public meeting information session with residents. This will assist them gauging if 99 units can overcome initial objections. In light of this increase, developers are asking if this be preferable to the 86 dwellings which can be built with current consent. Once I know more, I'll keep councillors and residents updated.
Propellers to shawls at Osborne. Queues snaked around the grounds of Osborne House as crowds gathered to have their treasures evaluated on Antiques Roadshow. The show, which is celebrating its 40th year, made its first visit to the island yesterday, and the grounds were filled with antique items, including a 6-foot propeller, sewing machines, and even a 200-year-old copy of The Sun. Presenter Fiona Bruce enjoyed revisiting Osborne and described it as the perfect setting for the show. She said, "We often get people bringing Victoria's bloomers to the show, so you never know. It would be lovely if some of the items lost from the house after Victoria died made their way back here today." Jane Jacobs from Thorley said she was hoping for 4 figures from a shawl her mother found in a junk shop 50 years ago. She said it was being sold as a dog blanket, but I've been told it's in better condition than the original shawl in the V&A. The programme will be screened in the new year.
An Ireland couple are planning to mount a legal fight after their 6-year-old son's classmate was allowed to wear a dress to school. Nigel and Sally Rowe said their son was confused as to why the child at the Church of England school dressed as both a boy and a girl. Their son will be schooled at their freshwater home with his 8-year-old brother, who they removed from the same school a year ago over a similar incident. The couple now plan to take the school to a local authority tribunal and apply for a judicial review of the Department of Education guidelines, arguing their rights to raise their children in line with biblical values are not being respected. Speaking to the county press this week, Mrs. Rose, 42, said, "We're not transphobic. I have no hatred in my heart at all. We know these families and we love them. I feel like our voice has been pushed down for a long, long time for fear of this. We've been called transphobic. We're hated for speaking about what we believe. We feel on a national level the guidelines given to schools are not always lawful and not always correct." The couple, who appeared on ITV's This Morning and Radio 4's Today programmes to defend their decision, are being supported by Christian Concern, a Christian organisation which has backed campaigns that oppose abortion and same-sex marriage. Its chief executive, Andrea Williams, said, "We should not be promoting transsexualism in a school environment in this way. We say it's illegal. You're teaching them gender is fluid. Gender is binary. There is male and female." Meanwhile, Jeff Williams, Director of Education for the Diocese of Portsmouth, said Church of England schools were inclusive environments where pupils learned to respect diversity of all kinds. He said, "Like any other state school, our schools comply with the legal requirements of the Equalities Act 2010. Among other things, this requires schools to accept the wishes of children and their families with regard to gender identity. It would be unlawful for any of our schools to do otherwise." Since the story first appeared on the front page of the Sunday Times, many people have taken to social media to voice their opinions. An Isle of Wight Pride spokesperson said, "Pride recognises this is not an issue about sexuality whatsoever, but is about gender identity, and regardless of anyone's views or beliefs, there are children involved and affected by this issue, which must be a priority. We're glad the school in question did the right thing and made the school a welcome and diverse environment for all its pupils." After talking to the mother of the boy at the centre of the debate, Isle of Wight MP Bob Seeley said, "I have no doubt the parents are behaving responsibly and appropriately. This is a complex and private matter involving a young child and a family. The best way I can help is to respect their right to privacy."
Cross Solent Ferry Company, Red Funnel, was sold for £70 million above the asking price, according to a report by the Sunday Times. The company was put up for sale with a listed sale price of £250 million earlier this year. Following its sale to a group of UK and Canadian pension funds in June, Red Funnel declined to say how much it was sold for, but according to the Sunday Times, it was finally sold for £320 million. Among the consortium of buyers was West Midlands Pension Funds, which manages the pensions for 302,000 council employees in the Birmingham and Wolverhampton area.
Despite a delay at customs, more than 100 miles of Isle of Wight Day bunting arrived on the island this week. The bunting was held up at the airport, leading to fears it wouldn't arrive in time for September 23rd. However, the decorations are now stocked at various distribution points across the island, including Whitelink, Red Funnel and Hover Travel terminals, as well as supermarkets in Freshwater and Ventnor and Key Arts and the Guildhall, Newport. The bunting, which is free, will also be available through Town and Parish Council. Shoppers can park free in Isle of Wight Council car parks on September 23rd when Isle of Wight Day returns. There will be events throughout the weekend, and the Isle of Wight Council hopes to make it easier for islanders to show their support by allowing people to park free at locations around the island on the Saturday. Free parking will be available at the following car parks: Cowes Cross Street, maximum 3 hours, Freshwater Avenue Road, Lake New Road, Newport Sea Close and County Hall, Ryde Lind Place Victoria Street, maximum 3 hours, Sandown Fort Street, Seaview Pier Road, Shanklin Orchardley Road.
A prestigious island hotel is devastated at its second 0-star food hygiene rating in 6 months. The George Hotel Yarmouth was given the rating after an inspection by the Isle of Wight Food Standards Agency, FSA, in July. A zero standard rating means an establishment requires urgent improvement. The report, seen by the county press, states there was a risk of cross-contamination with two vacuum packers because they were within sufficient proximity of each other so as to permit blood and raw meat juices to splash from the raw vacuum packer to the ready-to-eat one. Other criticisms included chef training, food hygiene instruction, storage of high-risk food above 8 degrees centigrade, obstruction of a wash-hand basin, food stored on the floor of a walk-in chiller, and raw meat above ready-to-eat food. But General Manager Brian Garside questioned the timing of the inspection. Mr Garside said, "The FSA can inspect any restaurant at any time, but the inspector came into our kitchen on a busy Saturday night in the middle of summer while we were preparing and serving 70 covers. In my 18 years as a general manager in the quality country house hotel sector, I have never experienced an inspection like this, which also takes our head chef out of service. Of course, during a busy service there will be spillages and mistakes, but afterwards the kitchen has a thorough cleaning, as happens in all establishments. We've addressed any previous problems and employed a new head chef. All our staff are compliant with rules of hygiene and we have documentation of their training. We are devastated by this rating after all our hard work and continue to be in talks with FSA. A council spokesman confirmed, inspectors have the right to enter food premises at all reasonable hours without the need to make an appointment, and they usually arrive without notice.
An Island teacher who lost her friend to a brain hemorrhage is urging people to talk about organ donation. Emily Alcock, 24, from Sandown, supports the NHS blood and transplant campaign Let's Talk About It. Emily, a teacher at the Island Free School Ventnor, is an advocate of the Live Life, Give Life charity. Emily's friend, Beth Dykes, died of a brain hemorrhage at 21 4 years ago in Walsall, West Midlands. Beth's family donated her organs because she had expressed interest, although had not signed the register. Emily said, as a result of Beth's selfless decision, with the support of her family, many lives have been saved. Talking about organ donation makes it easier for families to decide to donate a relative's organs. Please have that conversation today.
Hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of cannabis being produced in a Sandown property landed a man in court. Darren Rose, 26, of Shaw Road, Ventnor, appeared before Island magistrates on Friday, September the 1st, and pleaded guilty to producing the Class B drug. Vivian Ducey, prosecuting, said police had found around 40 plants in a relatively sophisticated growing operation. The case was sent to the Isle of Wight Crown Court for sentencing on September the 29th because the offence was considered so serious it was outside of the magistrate's sentencing powers. Rose was given unconditional bail until sentencing.
A former hotel in Shanklin is to be transformed into a luxury 5-star resort offering full-time care packages for guests. The care home group has bought the former Auckland Hotel and will provide a range of services from daily visits to full-time care at the hotel through its care-providing arm, Caring Communities. A regional office is to be opened soon in Shanklin to recruit a team which will deliver care services at the hotel as well as care at home for people across the island. The group is also looking into acquiring the Ocean Hotel in Sandown. The Auckland Hotel on Queen's Road has been a successful family business for many years but is now shut. New terracing, glazing and disabled access will be installed and the hotel's 32 bedrooms will be reduced to 26 to create large single and double rooms. A 60-seat restaurant is also planned. Care Home Group Chief Executive Sean Murray said, "We're delighted to add the Auckland Hotel to our development portfolio and excited to unveil our plans for turning it into a luxury resort which reflects the needs of our ageing population. Many of us will need regular care and support in our later years. When we do, taking a holiday break or perhaps finding somewhere to convalesce after illness or a hospital stay can be difficult to arrange or daunting to organise. We plan to create a luxury environment where guests can enjoy their time with us with the peace of mind of knowing all their needs, however complex, will be catered for by our team during their stay."
Island Line's new franchise operator, First MTR, has been making very positive noises about the future of the 8.5 mile route, according to Isle of Wight Council leader, Councillor Dave Stewart. Securing a sustainable service and making sure Ryde Pier continues to operate should be a priority, the Council Scrutiny Committee for Regeneration heard last Thursday. Committee members were presented with conclusions reached by the Island Transport Infrastructure Task Group, which presented its report earlier this year. Cabinet Member for Transport, Councillor Ian Ward, who met First MTR, said they are really keen to get involved with the Isle of Wight and have joined Visit IW. They see the line as an essential part of tourism. Councillor Michael Lilly highlighted how First MTR had been working with Isle Access to develop the former ticket office at Ryde Esplanade into a cafe. Councillor Chris Quirk said it was vital Ryde Pier was protected, but added he was encouraged by the potential to expand the Isle of Wight Steam Railway to run into St John's Road, which was highlighted in the report. He said, "I'd love to see the railway reconnected to Newport and Ventnor, but I don't think now is the time to ask for it." Councillor Stewart added there were aspirations and reality. "I'd like to see a good, sustainable service on Island Line as a minimum. Certainly this new franchise holder has a similar aspiration," he said.
A bat has been rescued from the letterbox of an island home. The rare grey long-eared bat was discovered after the owner of the property on Ryde seafront opened the cage behind the letterbox. The Isle of Wight Bat Hospital said the owner of the property was checking his mail and this little girl bat dropped out of the box. Thankfully he called us and we came to collect her. There were no injuries present. She has perfect wings. She's just a little dehydrated and hungry, but we don't think she'd been there for too long. We hope to be able to release her when the weather is better. She'd been named Pretty by the team at the Isle of Wight Bat Hospital.
Uncertainty still surrounds development of Kingston Marine Park, East Cowes, and the future of the island's marine industry. Kingston Marine Park is seen as the new shipbuilding hub for the island, but work on it has stalled until funding is found. When work will restart at Kingston remains unclear, although Isle of Wight Council leader Councillor Dave Stewart has said it is his number one priority. Peter Morton, boss of Wight Shipyard, which has a bulging order book but an uncertain future at the Union Flag Columbine hangar at Venture Quays, East Cowes, has appealed for clarity and security. The industrial use of Columbine and Venture Quays for boat building is likely to end soon because of plans to build a new marina on the River Medina. This has forced Mr Morton to consider the future of the company, which employs nearly 100 people on the island. Another firm, previously based at Venture Quays, SME, has already relocated to Scotland due to the uncertainty. The questions about the future of island shipbuilding coincide with the Countess of Wessex opening a new £12 million centre of excellence for composites, advanced manufacturing and marine at Whippingham, which trains young people for the marine industry. At the CECAMM opening on Wednesday, Councillor Stewart said he and MP Bob Seeley were meeting Secretary of State Sajid Javid to ask for government to help keep shipbuilding jobs here. They would also ask for the Medina to be given the status of an enterprise zone, a designated area which gets tax breaks and government help. I've spoken to Mr Morton and told him the Isle of Wight Council is committed to working as a facilitator with all parties to make Kingston happen. I am confident it will. Kingston is not the only answer, but it is part of it, said Councillor Stewart. The council has set aside £1 million toward the cost of a vital ship hoist to get large craft in and out of deep water at Kingston, but more cash is needed. The Homes and Communities Agency, HCA, kick-started the project, putting in the Kingston infrastructure in preparation for the council developing the site as a replacement for Venture Quays, which the HCA sold to developers. Victoria Quay Estates Limited is the HCA's development partner for the East Cowes regeneration, which includes the new 400-berth Camper and Nicholson Marina, bars, restaurants and 53 homes which are subject to planning. Planning applications were lodged in July last year separately to grant permission on an appeal for Red Funnel's nearby multi-million-pound terminal redevelopment. No comment could be obtained from the Hong Kong-based VQEL over its development timetable.
Wight Shipyard boss Peter Morton has bought a stake in Isle of Wight boat builders Aluminium Marine Consultants, that's AMC. Wight Shipyard built Red Jet 6 and is known for its work on high-speed ferries, while AMC specialises in workboats for offshore wind farms. Both companies are based at East Cowes. AMC will remain separate and trade under the same name. AMC Commercial Director Rob Stewart said, "We're looking forward to working together. With a healthy order book, the future for AMC, the Isle of Wight and UK boat building looks very positive." Mr Morton said, "AMC has such a strong reputation in the industry. By joining forces, we're better placed to monopolise aluminium boat building in Europe."
The Isle of Wight Council's floating bridge budget is going way off the scale, with the replacement Jenny Lee boat ferry service costing £1,000 a day. The shocking figure was revealed at a Cowes Town Council meeting last Thursday. Town councillors gave feedback from a meeting with Isle of Wight Council leader, Councillor Dave Stewart, after discussing the problems with the £3.2 million floating bridge, which was taken out of service indefinitely. Councillor Stewart reportedly suggested East Cowes and Cowes Town councils chipped in towards the cost of the replacement Jenny Lee, which is said to be costing the authority £1,000 a day. Cowes Town Council agreed to discuss it at its next meeting. Disabled passengers are struggling to use the Jenny Lee, according to Cowes councillors, and Wet Wheels, a charity that provides boat trips for disabled people, is discussing providing a specialised crossing service. Councillor Laura P.C. Wilcox said the Isle of Wight Council was looking to claim compensation in order to pay for a full replacement service while the floating bridge was out of action.
Wight Shipyard has won an order to build a 21-metre passenger catamaran for a high-profile Scottish tourism operation. The order, the second for the East Cowes Shipyard in as many weeks, follows the announcement of a second 41-metre high-speed craft for Red Funnel. The new Scottish vessel will join the Jacobite Cruises fleet on Loch Ness, cruising between Dochgarach just outside Inverness, Clansman Hotel and the historic ruins of Urquhart Castle. Wight Shipyard Co. WSC Chief Executive Peter Morton said, "Coming a matter of days after the announcement of a repeat Red Funnel order and following the recent delivery to MBNA Thames Clippers of two 35-metre low-wash river catamarans for London, the order for Jacobite's Cruises' new catamaran underpins WSC's track record in building sustainable and low environmental impact vessels. The new vessel will be delivered in time for the 2018 summer season."
The dementia ward at St Mary's Hospital is far from acceptable and could be replaced by a bespoke facility built by a housing association. Care Quality Commission, CQC, inspectors slated the ward during last year's visit and issued a Section 31 notice, meaning the trust had to make urgent changes as people were considered to be at risk of harm. Bosses put temporary measures in place and are now working on plans to build a new facility to better meet the needs of patients. The NHS Trust could work with a housing association to build the bespoke unit with access to gardens, and board members described this as their preferred option. Other options include sending dementia patients to the mainland for specialist care or looking after them on the island using independent service providers. Shackleton Ward was launched in 2013 and saw 5 patients with severe dementia move from Shackleton House Ryde to the hospital ward. Kevin Bond, the new Director of Mental Health, said at a board meeting last week, "It is inappropriate for care in the long term and it is far from acceptable as an assessment area for dementia. The long-term solution will take at least 2 years, so we're working on a temporary solution in the meantime." Eve Richardson, Chairman of the board, said, "I think we're missing a trick if we don't look at involving the housing association. The NHS isn't always good at this and both us and the council have got land, so we should be very creative around this."
There is no plan B for the troubled Cowes floating bridge other than making it work as intended, according to the Isle of Wight councillor responsible for transport. Speaking at a meeting of the Council's Scrutiny Committee for Regeneration, Councillor Ian Ward said, "There is a commissioning process. Things go wrong." Committee member Councillor Andrew Garrett had asked him, "Plan A is unravelling and I really hope the situation can be resolved. What is Plan B if it's not possible to bring floating bridge number 6 into service at all?"
So, 2 motions about the floating bridge are back on the agenda at next week's Isle of Wight Council meeting. Both motions were put before the Council in July but were adjourned without discussion. Councillor Julie Jones-Evans and Councillor Carl Love have recommended charges are suspended for the foreseeable future until all the problems with the floating bridge have been resolved. Additionally, Councillor Julia Baker-Smith has called for charges to be scrapped entirely for parents walking their children to school on the other side of the river. She said charging pedestrians on the floating bridge has had a significant impact on many user groups, but a particularly unfair impact on parents with children choosing healthy routes to school, who are now being charged up to £3 per day. This presents a potential and unnecessary barrier to low-income families to maintaining school attendance. Wednesday's meeting starts at 6 p.m. at County Hall, Newport.
The larger housing associations on the island need to step up to the plate and build more affordable homes. Isle of Wight Council Cabinet Member for Housing, Councillor Barry Abraham, told Tuesday's Council Scrutiny Committee the island-based Vectis Housing Association was doing the best it could, but the other larger associations needed to do more. The unacceptable rise in the number of homeless people, especially those with families, in bed and breakfast accommodation was raised by Councillor Shirley Smart. Councillor Abraham told her, "I share your concern. I don't think our housing associations have been delivering what they should have done. It's quite clear in particular the lower end of the market is not working and we need to find a solution." Meanwhile, Councillor Chris Quirk told the Councillors' Regeneration and Housing Scrutiny Committee last Thursday they needed to think outside the traditional box to come up with solutions to tackle the island's affordable housing crisis, perhaps by looking into prefabricated housing. The committee heard around 40% of island households struggled to pay affordable rents. Councillor Michael Lilly claimed there was a crisis in housing provision on the island. Nearly 50% of new homes needed on the Isle of Wight were one-bedroom apartments, he said. He added, nearly 40% of islanders can't afford to access homes without a subsidy. That's quite an extreme percentage when you look at other parts of the UK. The committee agreed to set up a task and finish group to look into the issue.
A Wight Link crew member suffered burns to his face, head, neck and hands in a fire on board a car ferry. Inspectors from the Marine Accident Investigation Branch examined the Wight Sky ferry on Wednesday following the fire on Tuesday night to determine whether a full investigation should be carried out. There were reports of an explosion when the fire broke out in the engine room beneath the car deck during the 9 p.m. sailing from Lymington shortly before the ferry docked at Yarmouth. The fire was believed to have been caused by oil igniting in the engine, according to the Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service. 5 fire engines from Newport Cowes and the West Wight rushed to the scene, together with rescue support vehicles and Coast Guard crews. One crew member, a man in his 50s, was taken to St Mary's Hospital with burns. An ambulance service spokesman said his injuries were not serious as he was wearing protective clothing and he was discharged later that night. The Wight Sky was towed away on Wednesday afternoon and replaced with another vessel, the Wight Sun. Wight Link Chief Executive Keith Greenfield said it was too early to say what had caused the fire, and while he was concerned, he reassured passengers the company's vessels were safe. He praised the crew, who were quick to put out the fire and keep passengers informed. Dealing with fire is part of their training, and they followed procedure and kept all the passengers safe, said Mr Greenfield.
Campaigners will march from St Mary's Hospital to Cowes, get on the Red Jet and continue to Southampton General Hospital to highlight the journey Isle of Wight patients have to tackle. The march, organised by Save Our NHS, takes place on September 23rd, meeting at 9:45 a.m. The group, consisting of concerned members of the public, has been raising serious concerns about the Sustainability and Transformation Plan, a plan to increase the island's healthcare links with the mainland, and fears the Isle of Wight will be hit by cuts. Co-organiser Christine Lightbody of East Cowes said everyone who cared about the NHS was welcome to join in the event. "We need to highlight the difficulties of travelling for patients and their families," she said. "We're desperate to keep our services on the island and we have to fight for them. A lot of people still get extremely good care on the island and that makes them think everything is okay, but there's a big problem nationally and locally and we need to save our NHS." An Isle of Wight NHS Trust spokesman said, "Our intentions are that patients in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight will benefit from more health and care services being provided closer to or in their homes over the next 5 years. They will have more choice about when and where to receive treatment, less travelling time to attend appointments, and less time waiting for appointments, diagnostic tests and test results. They'll also have more opportunities to be cared for at home and in the community rather than in a hospital setting."
An 18-year-old woman was spared jail after admitting robbing a woman of her shoes on a bus and harassing her. Casey Wildish of Amherst Place Ryde had been drinking vodka with friends on the upper deck of a Southern Vectis bus on June the 23rd when the victim, Jade Sandals, who was known to the defendant, boarded the bus at Fairley Road, prosecutor Edward Elton, prosecuting, told the Isle of Wight Crown Court. Mr Elton said Wildish started shouting abuse at Miss Sandals and said, "You're getting banged when you get off this bus." Wildish and her friends surrounded Miss Sandals and Wildish demanded she hand over a coat, shoes, necklace and tobacco, which she did, Mr Elton said. Wildish and her friends followed Miss Sandals off the bus and continued the harassment even after police arrived. Over the course of the next month, Wildish made threatening phone calls to Miss Sandals, which including telling her to kill herself, Mr Elton told the court. Representing Wildish, Kelly Brocklehurst described the incident as intimidation rather than actual violence and highlighted Wildish's unhappy and unstable childhood that had been surrounded by violence and drug abuse. Wildish has been placed into foster care at 16 and had 28 previous convictions for 56 offences. She'd been in custody since the preliminary magistrate's hearing and during this time had engaged in work within the prison and completed a detox programme. Recorder Simon Levine sentenced Wildish to a year's imprisonment, suspended for 2 years with 30 days rehabilitation activities and a 6-month alcohol treatment requirement.
A £714,000 grant will help build a new unit within the emergency department at St Mary's Hospital. The money has come from the Department of Health and will go towards a new dedicated area for patients who have been referred to the hospital by their GP, meaning they'll not have to wait alongside emergency patients. The extra funds will also help improve the flow of the hospital by sending patients to a new care area, which will help free up emergency doctors to deal with people coming in by ambulance.
Eddie Izzard has told her he and Dame Judi Dench surprised a group of Osborne House tourists by turning up during their visit in full costume while filming Victoria and Abdul. The film, which premiered in Britain this week, was partly filmed at the East Cowes English Heritage property. During a break from filming scenes, Eddie, who plays Queen Victoria's son Bertie, who became Edward VII, and Dame Judi, who plays Queen Victoria, made an impromptu visit to the Durbar room while a group of tourists were looking around. In an interview with This Morning, Eddie said, "I said to her, I've spoken to the English Heritage people and they have said they can sneak us in there. So we went down corridors, she as Queen Victoria and me as Bertie. We went in there as 10 people were just looking around and suddenly we could see them going, 'Oh, that's Queen Victoria there.' I saw one camera go up and I was whispering, 'No cameras, no cameras.' I was like security dressed as Bertie because I did not want those photos getting out there early." This Morning host Philip Schofield said, "Those tourists must have thought English heritage go to a lot of trouble."
The island's pioneering mental health project was presented to Prince William. Sergeant Paul Jennings of Hampshire Constabulary and Vicky Hayworth, the Isle of Wight NHS Trust's Innovation Lead for Mental Health Services, attended a policing conference in Oxford to discuss the award-winning Serenity Integrated Mentoring (SIM) network. As well as running a workshop for the conference participants, the pair also spoke to Prince William about the importance of addressing mental health issues. SIM trains a police officer in high-intensity behaviour risk management and basic clinical theory and puts them into their community mental health team to assist with the clinical and risk management.
Parents at Shelfleet CE Primary School are concerned if the school-run parking nightmare is not resolved soon, someone will get hurt. The school, which has no connecting footpath to the village, is served by just one public car park on the opposite side of Shelfleet Main Road, a parish council recycling point car park. However, this is too small to serve the busy school run, and parents are forced to scramble for space in narrow Station Road, which has no footpath. Shelfleet Parish Councillor Alex Burt said during a council meeting on Wednesday, "As a parent dropping off at the school, I can say the parking situation is getting out of hand. It is getting dangerous. It is an absolute nightmare. There are kids everywhere and cars going up and down Station Road. Before long, someone is going to get hurt." Parents used to park in the Horse and Groom pub car park next to the Parish Council car park, but landlord Stephen Gilbert has had to close it in the mornings after discovering his business would be liable were an accident to happen on his land. Mr Gilbert said, "I'm not against parents using the car park as long as we can get them insured. I've had a meeting with the school and the council to try and find a solution. If the council comes back to me with a solution, we will open it up again. The parents are lovely people, but the risk I have to take outweighs the reward. It is not a public amenity, it is a private business that I've spent years building up and could come tumbling down."
4 more staff have been recruited to the Isle of Wight Council call centre in a bid to cut waiting times. On Tuesday, Isle of Wight Council Scrutiny Committee was told one caller was put on hold for 48 minutes and the average waiting time was 3 minutes. Deputy Council Leader, Councillor Stuart Hutchinson, said, "We want to cut that time to 1.5 minutes and hopefully below that." The committee, which agreed to review call centre performance at its October meeting, was told the new staff were being trained in 4 weeks.
A taxi driver accused of rape in Newport has been conditionally bailed for by an Isle of Wight Crown Court trial. Lee Medley, 43, of St Michael's Avenue, Ryde, appeared at the Crown Court on Tuesday, accused of rape on August the 6th. He pleaded not guilty, and a three-day trial is set to start on March the 5th next year.
Everything about Texas is big. The sky, the distances between cities, the people, their appetites and the weather. Most of the time it's warm, some of the time it's hot, but occasionally it rains. Rain like we never see in England. And the other week I experienced a once-in-a-lifetime deluge which turned parts of southwest Texas and Houston, the 4th largest city in the United States, into a lake. Along with millions of others, I was caught in a disaster, but I was also incredibly lucky, helped by strangers who gave food and shelter and who would accept nothing but our thanks. The drama unfolded like a movie. On Friday, September 1st, I witnessed shoppers pouring out of our neighbourhood store with trolleys piled with food and water. I'd seen the weather warnings, but I thought, what's a spot of rain to an Englishman? The next day, I was not so sure. The warnings persisted, so I went looking for supplies. It was a shock. Shelves had been stripped of bread, milk, eggs, meat and water. But we thought we were safe at home. So we prepared to sit out the tropical storm, which Hurricane Harvey had become, but it delivered 50 inches of rain in a few days, the equivalent of 9 days' flow of the Mississippi River. Our next shock came at 5 a.m. on the Sunday when my step-granddaughter burst into our bedroom crying the house was flooding. Our street was a river and we were uncertain what to do next. Eventually, around noon, my wife and I were rescued by volunteer members of the Cajun Navy, incredible people from Texas and other states who organised themselves to help their stricken neighbours. We saw acts of kindness on a breathtaking scale. Anything that could float was used, and I was taken to safety in the bottom of a canoe, which came dangerously close to capsizing, while my wife, an American, travelled first class on a jet ski. First responders, police, fire, ambulance, Coast Guard and the Texas National Guard were also heroes, but without the Dad's Army they would have been overwhelmed. Homes and businesses were abandoned, hospitals and prisons evacuated, and schools, churches and community buildings became sanctuaries. I don't recall any tears or tantrums, not even when the Fort Bend County Sheriff warned of possible alligators and snakes in the floodwater. Then one of the volunteers insisted on taking us into his home. He called his wife, and within minutes we were in their home, given dry clothes, food and a bed. We stayed for 2 nights, and nothing was too much trouble for our hosts and their cousins. A wonderful couple. I only hope to do the same for someone else someday. We're mopping up now and drying our home. We've lost many possessions, including a car which was submerged and written off. Of course there was low life waiting to prey on the vulnerable, but Houston's mayor ordered a 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew. Again, a new experience for me. And that's by former County Press editor Brian Dennis.
And an island-to-island appeal has been launched. An appeal has been launched to support the victims of Hurricane Irma living on the British Virgin Islands. Isle of Wight UKIP launched the island-to-island relief effort on Sunday and has requested donations of clothes, shoes, water and toys. For collections, contact Isle of Wight UKIP on 07990 535528, or if you wish, you can donate cash to the British Red Cross on 0300 023 0818.
And that ends today's part 1 of the Talking Newspaper. It's goodbye from Howard.
And goodbye from Pauline.
Hello, here we are again with Weekender. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Paul. I'm going to start with Letter of the Week. Time to dig for victory again, from Derek Newton in Binstead. In my youth I was taught that to dig for victory was important as fighting on the front line overseas. It's a lesson that many people of my age at the time put into practice. Unfortunately, today's generation is more concerned with their online friends, their bake-offs, their soaps, as last week's letter complaining of the storyline in soaps only proves, and their own pithy, dramatic lives. In my experience, a lot of people aged between 18 and 50 do not even care for Queen and country anymore. I feel as a nation we need to bring back national service. I am not unintelligent. I do recognise that sending tens of millions of people off to train for the army is unsustainable, especially in an economy increasing crippled by the bureaucrats in Brussels. This week I've realised the power of allotments and what it can teach someone about getting their hands dirty, doing a hard day's work for once. Every office, business and school on the island should be allocated an allotment. There is plenty of space for this on the west of the island, and each one can be treated in rotation by its workers. Coaches could carry workers from Ryde, Newport, Shanklin and beyond to their allotments, where they could grow produce for sustenance. They might even learn a thing or two about vegetables and healthy living. Luckily for me, I didn't have to do any gardening when I was younger. I caused enough fuss to get out of doing it. Perhaps as such I did not grow to be a green person, a concept that still somewhat confuses me, but that shouldn't excuse today's youngsters. If we're not fighting for the continued existence of our people, then what are we fighting for? It's time to dig for victory once more.
A letter from Edward Lyon of Sandown. I'm absolutely appalled by the attitude of Mr. and Mrs. Rowe in removing their child from school because of a transgender pupil. What sort of Christianity is it which allows such bigotry to thrive? It isn't one in which I could believe. God is either a God of love or a bigot. He can't be both. Furthermore, don't they know it's estimated 1 in every 2,000 children are born as intersex with confusing genitalia? How, if one believes in God, can one think he's not completely at ease with this and accepting of such children? If he wasn't, surely such an all-powerful deity wouldn't allow it. Where's the common sense, therefore, in being so prejudiced? Where's the Christian love and compassion? I am, though, very relieved by the Portsmouth Diocese and the school's complete support for the transgendered child. There's no hope of any church surviving in our more enlightened age unless all sexes are accepted into them as full members. If Christian bigots who believe every word in the Bible is true, in spite of it being very contradictory and not actually having been written down by God or Jesus, wish to continue worshipping in churches, they should have a care. Even now, there are not enough of them left to adequately finance such expensive structures. They therefore need all the support they can get from everybody, regardless of their sexuality. And there is another letter here from Janet Beckett Hossain of Ryde about wearing trousers. While I have no wish to heap more unhelpful opinion on the very sensitive matter of the boy wearing a dress to school, I do think there's a simple, practical, progressive step all junior schools can consider: removing skirts from the uniform. If all children wore trousers or shorts to school, it would simultaneously reduce gender stereotyping and help take the spotlight off children with fluid gender identities and their families. There's plenty of scope out there to express clothing choices. As a former nursery school practitioner and parent, I never could give a rational explanation to a child's question, "Why can't boys wear dresses?" when girls had the full range of clothing choice and expression.
Why was road closed early? This is a letter from Sue Birch, Chair of the Residents Association for Brading. How can Island Roads legally close a road a day early ahead of the proposed date when all the information conflicts? Chaos reigned in Brading on September the 7th, causing many residents and visitors to be inconvenienced, resulting in chaos. People got very wet because some could not drive their vehicles home. Residents visiting the town hall for a Brading Town Council meeting were affected. including councillors both town and county. They too were unaware of the evening closure. People arriving early in the town, visited eateries or attending classes in the church hall were also caught out, and all because the road closed a day earlier than planned, resulting in them becoming trapped in the town. Earlier in the week it became apparent some residents in Key Lane had not received notification of the road closure. It was only on the evening of September the 7th, thanks to Councillor Michael Merwill, who personally delivered to residents around tea time, that some residents were finally informed of the closure planned for September the 8th. How embarrassed must Councillor Merwill be to find out just a couple of hours later, contrary to the information he just delivered, he too was trapped by the early closure. The impact this action had in the town was not good, and it could have been potentially dangerous. An ambulance and police car on blues and twos had to divert up the Mall. Were these services not informed either? There had been a road traffic incident in Green Lane where a car ended up on its roof. Had this been a serious accident with a detour over the downs and diversion of approximately 5 miles, it could have put people's lives at risk. The only people who appeared to be informed and aware of the closure was Southern Vectors, as we later found out as they posted information.
Here's a letter from Chris Solomon of Bembridge, which is about dredging the seabed. Last week, the county press published an application for the dredging of 3,400,000 million tonnes from our seabed in Sandown Bay. Consequences, I've been told, have no significant environmental damage. Today, I received notification of a marine conservation zone to be established off the Nab Tower, fairly adjacent to the dredging area, and it appears these two groups are not communicating. I've been in contact with Southampton University to find out how many sea creatures will be killed in this dredging. I think this situation should be brought to wider attention.
We got a letter now, better way to pay at parking machines, from Mick Watts in Newport. I've read the Isle of Wight Council has now converted all parking machines on the island to take the new £1 coin. The article went on to say we can also use our mobile phones to pay for parking. While this is good news, surely this was the ideal opportunity to fit contactless payment modules. The advantages of contactless payment are numerous. You no longer need that pot of money in the car that thieves look for. Indeed, no more worrying about having the correct change at all, and it's quick and easy too. For the council, there will be no cost for money collection, probably fewer machines out of action from coin mechanism failures, and no money stored in the machine to tempt thieves. If you have a credit or debit card, you will have the contactless payment capability unless you have specifically opted out. The argument is often put that new technology can be difficult for older people, of which I am one. But actually paying with a contactless card is no more difficult than using a bus pass. Some might say that if I want to use technology to pay for parking, I can use my mobile phone, which I would if it wasn't for an additional transaction fee on top of the already overinflated parking costs.
Here's a letter from Bob Barton of Newport about the floating bridge again. Who supervised it? So the saga of the new floating bridge has now reached some form of conclusion by being taken out of service by the Isle of Wight Council. This has been a costly disaster and inconvenience to the inhabitants of both East and West Cowes. I feel that more questions need to be asked to the council as to what is going on. We've never experienced this kind of failure when other new bridges have been introduced. Also, another letter on the same subject by Neil Clifford of Cowes. If the Isle of Wight Council is to take legal action in order to seek compensation for the floating bridge, can we assume it will also be seeking compensation for those members of staff who operate the ferry and who are on 0 hours contract, so will not be paid while it's suspended?
Isle of Wight tourist system needs fixing. From Lynn Blackledge at Ryde. Visit Isle of Wight's David Thornton talks of brand new shiny cars in his letter about the tourism levy. That was in the County Press on the 1st of September. Does he really live in cloud cuckoo land? I hardly think an imposed levy, I hardly think an imposed levy on already struggling small tourism businesses is the same as a brand new shiny car. Then chastising the levy payers for not adding their information to the website won't endear him to them. He says despite letters and phone calls they haven't claimed their page on the website. I work with some of the levy players and the ones I have spoken to haven't received phone calls. Maybe rather than calling them out publicly, why not go and visit the levy payers and help them fill in the forms? Work with them rather than get them offside. Clearly, if hundreds of levy players haven't claimed their page, as his letter states, then Visit Isle of Wight system is broken and needs fixing.
This is a letter from George Mortimer of Ryde about a hospital trip. Last Monday, my wife had to go for a consultation with her orthopaedic surgeon at the Royal Southampton Hospital in Southampton. She is unable to sit on a normal chair or wheelchair, so she had to be on a stretcher in an ambulance. We left home at 8:30 a.m. and arrived at the hospital at 11. She saw the surgeon at noon. He spent nearly 10 minutes telling her she would have to continue wearing a hip brace for the next 3 months. We caught the 2 p.m. ferry back and arrived home at 3 p.m. Why were my wife and I, and I'm age 85, put through all this for a 10-minute chat that could easily have been conducted on the telephone and or Skype? The expense to the NHS of the ferry must have been enormous. Would it not be possible for these surgeons to hold a clinic on the island once a month and see all their island patients?
Right, this is looks like another letter about the bridge. Who oversaw the bridge contract? From Mrs. W. Wardrop at Cowes. Read the article Cowes Should Shout Louder in the County Press the 8th of September. Just because West Cowes does not appear in the press all the time does not mean we are not involved, and there have been some combined meetings with East Cowes on a non-floating bridge. The only possible politicians in Cowes Town Council are 4 who are also Isle of Wight Council members, the remaining 12 being volunteers only, all of whom are equally concerned. The Town Council does not have the powers of the county authority and can therefore only make serious representations repeatedly to the Isle of Wight Council, which was in any event the ultimate authority actually commissioning the new floating bridge. It is understood that designers and makers as far away as Wales blame each other, while islanders appear unable to do anything but watch and wait during months of interrupted travel. In view of the reported building of the high-quality Mercury Clipper, why was the new floating bridge not built by one of the many experienced local builders, thus creating or maintaining work for the island? Why did Wales benefit instead? If this was a cost-cutting exercise, then it has probably failed. I understand Isle of Wight Council contracts are dealt with by unelected officers with little or no county council input. At the end of the day, however, it is the councillors who are held responsible at local elections. Are the relevant officers, effectively employees funded by the taxpayer, held to account at all while safely retaining their jobs? A further County Press article cited problems with the Irish Strangleford ferry from the same designers or architects on coming into service last October. Were no background investigations ever carried out as to any of the designers and or builders' prior expertise, before deciding to spend some £3 million plus of Islanders' increasingly hard-earned cash. Since January this year, now 9 months ago, this is definitely not due diligence or value for money when the old bridge was taken off 3 to 4 months before scheduled new one. Why? Immediately new one proved not fit for purpose. How flawed was this design? How soon will the public be advised of the full independent review mentioned by Councillor Ian Ward to thoroughly deal with design, delivery and procurement and resultant accountability? It will soon be a whole year since this fractured main road link fiasco began. In my lifetime, I can remember 2 new bridges being built prior to the current one. Was the construction of this latest bridge properly supervised by council representatives? In past years, when the service was run by the Old Cowes Urban District Council, the bridge was managed by people who had marine engineering experience and seagoing qualifications. I would like to know what the current situation is and how it compares with the past. It does seem the bridge has displacement problems in its design. If the council had no one supervising its construction, it becomes reminiscent of the debate of Cowes Enterprise College, when it had no council clerk of the works during its construction and cost thousands of pounds to put right. You cannot take shortcuts to save expenditure on projects of this nature.
This is a letter from Nigel Hartley, the Chief Executive Officer of Earl Mountbatten Hospice. This year marks the 35th anniversary of our island's Earl Mountbatten Hospice. Over those 35 years, thousands of islanders have been supported through some of the most difficult times in their lives. We know when people come to die, although difficult and devastating, it can be important to create good memories so that those left behind can get on with their lives, can cherish the time they have left to spend with their loved ones, and rather than retreating in fear and panic, take the opportunity to face things head on. Hopefully, our expertise and knowledge at Earl Mountbatten has enabled many people to accept the inevitable and to make the most of what often can be an unbearable time. Our community continues to tirelessly support our work, our innovations and developments to ensure more people than ever are receiving the care and the support they need at the right time and in the right place. We are told that the right place, the majority of the time, is within people's own homes. So we've grown our care and support, so currently we look after around 650 people on any one day within the places they live. 35 years is a long time, and history is inevitably full of both triumphs and difficulties. People tell me that even during the times of difficulty and turmoil, the care and support given by staff and volunteers from our hospice has remained outstanding. This outstanding care was confirmed by the Care Quality Commission with an outstanding rating earlier this year. As a thank you and a true mark of celebration and achievement, the hospice is open for public celebration on Friday, October the 13th between 12:30 p.m. and 3 p.m. This birthday party is a time to be thankful both for the work the hospice undertakes, but also for the constant and unfailing support of our island community. After all, our island's hospice belongs to each and every one of us. Because of this, everyone is welcome to come and applaud the best our island has to offer, particularly as the hospice's work comes into play during some of the most shattering and vulnerable times in our lives. Do join us and bring your friends. 35 years is a wonderful achievement, and it's right to celebrate together.
Yeah. All right, we now move on to looking back. 100 years ago, September the 22nd, 1917. Yet another rise in coal prices sent local authorities into a frenzy as they appointed committees to fix the price of coal. The urgency for a fixed price was greater as winter was drawing near. The coal merchants were consulted on the plans, but the councils had little to no power. Suggestions for a full meeting of coal merchants were made before a final decision. And also from this same edition, Sandown residents were called to a meeting told it's about time they organised a volunteer detachment. Colonel Sir Charles Seeley, who made the call for Sandown volunteers to be set up, said from what he knew of Sandown, he would have thought it unnecessary to come and show them the need for the group.
75 years ago, subsidence wreaked havoc on houses at Seagrove Bay, Seaview, causing £40,000 worth of damage, which I think is equivalent to £1,729,500 today, worth of damage, and leaving some property uninhabitable. The total of 14 homes along the esplanade showed signs of being in a dangerous position. A special works committee meeting was called, and it was decided a full evaluation of the situation was needed, with reports of the findings to be sent to relevant householders. Also 75 years ago, kind-hearted Gurnard girls received a letter from Mrs. Churchill after raising £10, which is equivalent now to £432, to help the Russians. This is 1942. The 8 girls, all aged between 8 and 10, settled on the idea of a jumble sale, then went door to door collecting jumble. And there's a whole list of the names of the girls who held the sale at the home of Mrs. Mitchell of Worsley Road.
And we now move on to 50 years ago, September the 16th, 1967. A Scamp was due to appear on the island in March, it was announced. Scamp, the ill-fated moped, which will be discontinued after less than a year in production, was a product of a Binstead engineering firm, A.N. Clark. It was planned the factory would produce 250 a week. The venture had been a year in the making and was said to combine all the best features of a bicycle with that of a 40cc moped.
25 years ago, that's 1992, a rare collection of plants, the only one of its kind in the Northern Hemisphere, was stolen from Ventnor Botanic Garden. The entire collection of Pseudopanax plant group had been built up over 6 years and by garden curator Simon Goodenough, who had travelled the world and spent thousands of pounds of his own money to bring the unusual specimens to Ventnor. The collection consisted of more than 30 plants and was worth about £2,000, which is now equivalent to £3,798. Mr. Goodenough believed the theft was carefully planned and the plants would probably end up in the hands of collectors.
The last item now from looking back. 10 years ago, September the 15th, 2007, divers discovered a rare wreck of a Dakota aircraft off Sandown Bay. The exact location of the aircraft was kept secret while plans were formulated to identify the aircraft's history. It didn't take long for divers to find the undercarriage and its 2 engines, and they planned to record the engine numbers which would enable them to identify the plane. The Dakota was the backbone of wartime transport, and most RAF versions have been retired or sold off by 1950.
Now, over to Wight memories. The headline is Bringing in the Harvest. Harvesting has changed out of all recognition over the years. Richard Wright visits an exhibition which charts the changes. Island farmers have made hay while the sun shines from well before the first written record of this old English proverb was recorded in Tudor times. Since the dawn of farming, there would have been appreciation of the wisdom of not leaving it too late to gather in the hay. Taking several days to cut, dry and gather without the aid of weather forecasting, there was all the more reason for them to make hay while the sun shines. In fact, haymaking remained a very labour-intensive fixture in the farm calendar up to the 19th century, with whole communities coming together to bring in the meadow harvest that would be needed to feed their cattle and horses throughout the winter months. However, over the past century, the introduction of modern machinery and weather forecasting has made haymaking reasonably quick and relatively stress-free in comparison to days of yore. Now, a new exhibition at Brittlesford Farm Hopkills Heritage Centre provides a view of these technological changes through the use of historic and contemporary photographs drawn from the local authority-owned James Daw collection, as well as several private collections, including those of the Twining, Griffin and Phillips families. Punctuated with beautiful illustrations by local artist Hannah George, the exhibition is the first part of a wider exploration and celebration of the cultural history and changing nature of post-war farming in the East Wight. This includes collecting reminiscences of former farm workers and making them accessible to a wider audience through the internet and by a rolling programme of exhibitions and events across the island over the next 3 years. Pete Fellows, who is pulling together exhibition material and farming tales for the Down to the Coast programme, said, "So far we've interviewed 15 older members of the island's farming community who have shared with us their memories of using cart horses to pull the harvester, feeding the baler by hand and riding home on top of the hay wagon, not something today's health and safety requirements would allow." Transcriptions of the interview will soon be made available on our website downtothecoast.co.uk. People interested in sharing farming or fishing industry memories can contact Pete Fellows on the Isle of Wight code 01983 823 855. The exhibition at the Wootton Centre runs until the end of the year.
We now come on to My View by Malcolm Mime, Tales from the Village Cricket Pitch. And so another summer has come and gone. It feels like a lifetime since Rod the Mod was strutting his stuff on the stage in Seaclose Park, and a further lifetime since the first ball of the Isle of Wight cricket season was bowled, which for the record was actually on April the 15th, and was bowled by Sway CC Jonathan Wooler to Ventnors CC Tom Leon. For those of you, bizarre people, who have no interest in cricket, I suppose I should apologise for the fact my column this week is once again about the beautiful game. This won't be a regular occurrence, but as cricket lovers now have 6 very long months to wait before we get to hear that wonderful sound of leather on willow again, I'm sure you can allow me this indulgence. I am once again revisiting the island cricket scene of the late 1960s, because last week, as I was flicking through the online CP County Press archive, which can be accessed via our website, I happened to stumble across a couple of rather amusing cricket stories from the issue dated Saturday, June the 7th, 1969. Here is what I found word for word. It could only happen at Haven Street. When Bembridge Sports entertained Haven Street in June of 1968 at Steyne Park, the match finished in a tie, both sides having scored 94 runs. The teams did not meet again until Sunday, this time at the Haven Street Hump, when once again the team finished with the same score, 33. The outstanding achievement of this game was the superb bowling of the Street's Roger Nichols, who finished with 7 for 11. For Bembridge, P. Allen took 5 for 23, and W. Allen finished with 3 for 2. It could only happen at Haven Street, and is oft quoted phrase in island cricket circles, and Sunday's game provided a further illustration. Roger Nichols bowled to put Allen and a Bembridge batsman hit the ball into long grass in the far corner of the field. It landed within the boundary, and with the batsman beginning to run, John Windsor began a frantic search, eventually calling on his fellow fielders for help. Umpire Tom Davies pointed out that if someone shouted "lost ball," the batsman would have to stop running. "Lost ball," chorused the Haven Street fielders, but the batsman kept running. When they reached 6, Put Allen and Geoffrey Worley decided they'd run enough, as by this time Tom Davies had joined in the laughter and was temporarily incapable of carrying out his duties. Somebody suggested a rule book should be consulted. When the ball was eventually found, the runs were allowed to stand, one of the few times a 6 has been scored at the hump, or anywhere else for that matter, without the ball going over the boundary or with the aid of overthrows. In the same issue of the County Press from June 1969, the following was reported. Undoubtedly the most unfortunate of the teams to be dismissed from the cup competition was Arreton, who went out to Whitecroft at Black Pan on Sunday. The Croft completed their 20 overs with 76 runs on board, with all various scores and figures. Arreton were on 75 for 8 when their score declared the 20 overs were up. It was not until after Whitecroft had gone home that the unfortunate scorer realised that Arreton had played only 18 overs. Arreton took the honourable course and allowed Whitecroft to enter the second round. Amateur cricket will always continue to provide wonderful tales. Roll on spring.
Here's an article by Rebecca Roncaroni, which is about the cost of school uniforms on the Isle of Wight. After reading about children on the mainland being sent home for school uniform infringements, I put posts on Facebook on 3 different Isle of Wight community groups asking people's opinions of uniforms. Did they agree with them? Did they think uniform code should include hairstyles? Would they share their stories? I had 86 responses. 76 people thought uniforms were a good idea. 10 were anti-uniform. 48 complained about the cost, especially the cost of buying items with the school logo on it. A typical comment was along the lines of, "I believe uniform is a good idea if it's very basic. Black trousers, white polo shirt, black cardigan or fleece with the So On logo is perfectly smart enough." This begged the question, if academies are demanding parents and pupils follow their uniform policies, and the vast majority of parents agree with the principle of uniforms, are the academies doing their level best to ensure the policy is practical to follow? In other words, are the schools doing their bit in this partnership? In 2013, the Department of Education issued guidance to governing bodies, school leaders, staff and local authorities, advising schools to give highest priority to cost, value and availability, keep branded items to a minimum, and avoid exclusive supplier contracts and cashback arrangements. In 2015, the Competition and Markets Authority wrote an open letter to schools and suppliers saying they must let parents shop around and exclusive supplier contracts were at risk of breaking competition and monopoly laws. I decided to look at the 5 academies, high schools in old money we have on the island, and work out the cost of buying a uniform for a 12 to 13-year-old. To make it fair, I listed basic uniform including PE kits. I looked at prices charged by the school's nominated suppliers and compared them to Marks and Spencer's and Asda. Well, there's a tremendous difference, as you know, one might imagine, between the cost with buying from the regular suppliers and buying from Asda and M&S. And there's a chart in the county press going through it in a very detailed way. We are living, as says Rebecca Roncaroni, in times of austerity. Many families are suffering financial hardship with little or no support. Our council does not give out uniform grants anymore. The question I started with was, are schools doing enough to help parents and pupils follow the school uniform policies?
Right, we now move on to Behind the News. This is an article by Megan Baines. 20 years after the death of the People's Princess, the county press looks back at some of Princess Diana's most memorable moments on the Isle of Wight. The island had links to the royal bride-to-be which predated her wedding to Prince Charles. Her ancestors were prominent in Ryde for many years, and St Thomas's Church, the oldest in the town, has the royal cipher and arms of the Spencer family hanging side by side for more than 150 years. Princess Diana's first visit to the island was on May the 30th, 1985, when she toured the £1 million Adelaide Centre assisted accommodation and respite facility at Ryde. Although security guards kept a close eye on the princess, when the crowds began to chant "We won't die," she walked away from her escorts and scrambled up the grassy bank to chat to excited spectators. County Press News features editor Richard Wright was there to cover the visit for the Portsmouth News. He said, "I was one of the press corps at the height of Di fever to meet her at the opening of the Adelaide Centre. She wore a stunning white two-piece and captivated the hundreds there simply with her presence. My colleague, photographer Chris Thwaites, and I agreed. Di's eyes had it. She spoke volumes with a glance. She also visited Fern Young Enterprise Centre at Ryde and spoke to some of the apprentices at work. She also found time during her visit to walk about in Sandown chatting with residents and holidaymakers. 2 fire engines were also given royal titles after Diana suggested they be named Harry and William after her 2 sons. Her final point of call was the East Yard Road Business Centre. Her second visit to the Isle of Wight was a flying one in May 1985, arriving by helicopter in East Cowes on a 10-minute stopover on her way to a children's party aboard the QE2. Diana's final visit was on December the 5th, 1988, and a bitterly cold wind did not deter the princess from walking among the crowds at Cowes. Linda Hamblin was 31 when she met Diana in Cowes. She said she was very relaxed and easy to talk to and very beautiful. I immediately felt a connection with her and forgot royal protocol and said, "It's lovely to meet you, Diana." But she wasn't worried and carried on smiling and talking about her son. Her interest in you was genuine, especially if it was then to do with children. She clearly adored little children. Following the tragic death of Princess Diana, crowds packed St Thomas's Church, Newport, for a memorial service. Speaking at the island's memorial service, Archdeacon the Venerable Mervyn Banting said, "Diana's gift was her ability to reach out and touch people who were untouchable, and in doing so reminding them they were still part of the human race. We must build into our lives that precious gift, and we have that capacity already, to touch, to care and to include."
Over to what's on the Isle of Wight. Vectis Radio has announced its winning numbers. The island's community radio station is going FM at 10 a.m. on November the 4th on the frequency 104.6. From that moment, the station will be available on FM for the first time, as well as continuing on digital. Station manager Ian Mack said it was a significant milestone, With our new transmitter switched on, we'll be able to reach most of the island and further afield with FM, he said. But of course, we'll still be on digital too. It means anyone, anywhere can tune in using lots of different methods, in the car, on our app, on a computer. For us, FM also stands for far more. So look out for far more local music and features. Vectis Radio was awarded a community licence by Ofcom as a recognised not-for-profit organisation. Its mission is to inform, entertain and inspire, and Vectis Radio will continue its work with young people, helping to build their confidence and skills through its 4Ps training school.
Steam, cider and cheese. Love cider, love cheese, then you will be impressed with the Isle of Wight Steam Railway's new cider and cheese event, which forms part of this year's Isle of Wight Day. Cider and cheese are a natural pairing, with rich, full flavoured cheeses perfectly offset by a glass of refreshing dry, medium or sweet cider. On Saturday and Sunday, September the 23rd and 24th, the Isle of Wight Steam Railway will be offering visitors a wide selection of award-winning island cheeses, ciders and perries to sample in a relaxing ambience of Haven Street Station while watching the trains go by. To celebrate Isle of Wight Day, there is a free admission to the event and workshop tours will be offered on both days. The cider bar will be open from 11 till 5. A range of hot and cold food will also be available and a full service of steam trains will be operating. You can also enjoy a display from Haven Falconry taking place on the events field.
This is also about Saturday, September the 23rd, Isle of Wight Day. Headline, the bunting has arrived. 1 week to go. Get your bunting while stocks last. It's time to decorate the island, adorn your house, your business, your garden, or whatever else you choose, and let's fly the flag for Isle of Wight Day. Bunting is completely free of charge, but any donation to the Isle of Wight Day Fund will be greatly appreciated. You can collect it from most places. There's a whole list. Tesco, Extra, Waitrose, all sorts of supermarkets, Key Arts, the Guildhall, County Press Shop, plus many more places.
There's an open day at Isle of Wight University of the Third Age. This is at Riverside, 26th of September, which is Tuesday. 11 till 1 is display of special interest groups. 2:15, How to Avoid Scams, talk by David Shirley. 2:30, Conjuring for Kids and Adults by David Randini. And 3:15 is refreshments and a raffle draw.
An event in support of Macmillan will be held at the Crab Inn, Shanklin Old Village, on Friday the 29th of September from 11 a.m. Throughout the day, cakes, coffees and something stronger will be sold in aid of the cancer charity. Well, that's all for today from Sarah.
And from Paul.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
This is the BBC.
This is In Touch, the magazine programme for people like me who are blind or partially sighted. I'm Peter Wight. Thanks for downloading this week's edition. Good evening. Tonight, a new broom at New College. We hear about plans for one of Britain's remaining schools specifically for visually impaired students, and the tricks and techniques of taking improvised comedy to the stage when you're not quite sure what's in front of you.
There's always that. Oh, no, am I supposed to laugh at this? And I tell them before the show, no, it is fine. Please do laugh. I really do want you to laugh, even when you feel you shouldn't.
We'll be hearing more from visually impaired comedian Tom Skelton later in the programme. But first, New College Worcester, or NCW, is not that new. Last year it celebrated its 150th anniversary of teaching what were then known as the Blind Sons of Gentlemen. Well, the class and the gender bias have now gone. It's co-ed and open to all, but it still has an academic slant. It's an independent school run by a trust, and I suppose it most resembles a residential grammar school. And it still believes in the age of mainstream that special schools have their place. It now has a new principal as well. She's Nikki Ross, and I've been talking to her about her plans for the school and about her first few months in the job.
When I went in my first week into the gym and saw a Year 8 class trampolining, my first thought was, well, actually, these students should not be doing this. This can't be safe. But I've learnt very quickly that they can do the same as anybody else. Things may need to be adapted slightly, but they are children and their learning opportunities are exactly the same as they would be in a mainstream school.
How did you prepare yourself for this job?
I was very, very conscious that I had major gaps in my knowledge and understanding of education. One was VI, where I had never even taught a student with any visual impairment, and the other was around residential care. So I learnt the Braille alphabet before I started. I talked to people a lot at the school before I actually started on my first day. And I think I need to recognise in myself that they are two areas that I'm going to have to continue to learn in. And it's actually really exciting for me to have new elements of things that I've never had to even contemplate before.
But I do feel bound to ask you, given those gaps, why do you think they gave you the job?
I was very clear in my interview, if I'm truthful, that I had these gaps, and they said that actually they were interested in leadership and that leading a school full of VI children probably wasn't that different from leading a school of sighted children. And I think in that they were pretty much right.
How secure do you think New College is? You know, with tightening local authority budgets, some councils have been increasingly unwilling to send visually impaired people out of their area to be educated.
Yeah.
You know, we can do it just as well, they argue. So how do you find the situation that you're faced with?
Well, interestingly, somebody handed me a letter on Friday from 1995 that they'd found in college explaining how difficult it was going to be to place able visually impaired children at New College because local authorities were not going to be able to do that. And here we are 22 years later facing exactly the same issue. There is no doubt that we're in challenging times financially, but so are all schools, whether they're special schools or mainstream schools, are facing financial difficulties. And I think it's very sad for parents that for many of our youngsters who are lucky enough to come to us, they've had to have a major battle in order to be able to prove that we are the best place to educate their children.
Are roles falling?
I would say they're stable. In the last sort of 2-3 years, the student numbers have been pretty much the same, slightly up one year, slightly down the next year. But obviously it's something that we are going to be very, very mindful of in this current financial climate.
And what can you say to local authorities, given the fact that, as you say, they are very strapped for cash? They're bound to say that, and the cost of New College would rank somewhere near some of our most expensive public schools.
Absolutely. And the argument that I want to give to local authorities is one about lifetime investment. Actually, if we can educate these children, which we do, to make sure that they are able to go out into society, take their place, hold down a job, actually in the long term we will save money. Often people don't want to look that far ahead, and I think at the moment we are having some difficult conversations with local authorities, and sometimes at the moment we are being more successful with students where it's just not worked in mainstream.
But as you say, this has been a perennial problem, but the money perhaps has been there. Now you have to convince them at a time when the money isn't there.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And it's a two-way process too. I would imagine that the local authorities find it very difficult, having to make difficult decisions based on finance as opposed to what's best for children. And I think that must be hard for anybody involved in education.
There's always been a problem for visually impaired youngsters with the transition from school to work, whether the route is through college or some other kind of training. What do you see as New College's role there?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Our Year 7s have been with us for a week. And to my mind, from the moment they enter New College Worcester, our job is to prepare them for leaving. And whether that's in terms of having plenty of work experience, making sure that they are able to learn to access everything so that they don't expect everything to be provided in a format or a font, for example, that they're able to easily access. But we've taught them the skills to find out how to do that. And I think we have a huge role to play in preparing the students for life beyond New College.
I have to say my own impression is that my generation got what you might call a tougher schooling for what turned out to be, in employment terms, a rather more protected world than now, by which I mean there were more jobs that were kind of earmarked for visually impaired people. Nowadays, it's almost the other way round, in that there is if you like, a more pastoral element to New College, but preparing them for a rather more unforgiving employment climate. Have we got that right completely?
I think we have got work to do as a college still on identifying careers, making sure we're putting students on the right curriculum to make sure that they are able to be successful once they leave.
Because the unemployment figures, as you know, are almost, they're not very different to what they were many years ago. We don't seem to be making progress.
That's absolutely right. And the statistics, I think, are quite horrific. I think our responsibility as a college is to make sure that for the local authorities who are paying a lot of money, that the payback for that is that the 30 or 40% of the VI community who do manage to be successful in holding down a full-time or a part-time job come from New College Worcester.
What would your aims be in that area?
Oh, they are several-fold. The first is about providing the very, very best education for our young people to make sure that they're able to gain really good qualifications to allow them to pursue the career that they dream of. I think we've got to get our careers education right. I think, importantly, we've got to get our youngsters out into the community as much as possible. And that might be when they're young. It might be going to a local guide company. It might be being involved. For example, we've got a running group that our running group work with the local community. We have volunteer runners who come in, so that lots and lots of contacts beyond NCW, so that the transition from what is a very safe environment is just made a little bit more real.
And on this question, I mean, we are a risk-averse society, an increasingly risk-averse society. Does that make it difficult for you to do what you need to do? You said right at the beginning that when you went to the school, you saw things that looked dangerous to you. Is it difficult to actually offer the kind of risks that perhaps visually impaired children need to learn to take?
I think there is the potential for that. I think the college works incredibly hard to reduce those risks. So the students do take part in all sorts of activities, and the risk assessment programme is really strong to make sure that everything that we do does become safe. I think it would be very easy to fall into the trap of we're not going to do that because it's dangerous, and the culture at the school isn't of that mindset.
And we actually had a young man on the programme a few weeks ago saying he hadn't settled well at Worcester and had gone elsewhere because, you know, he had been used to freedom and he didn't want to have to pass a test to go to the local pillar box.
Yes, but we also need the children to be safe. So I think that getting the balance right there is absolutely crucial.
Nikki Ross, the new principal of New College Worcester. And now to some of your reactions. The row about the RNIB's sale of a box at the Royal Albert Hall, left in a will for the use of blind music lovers, rumbles on. Barry Burrell seems to speak for many when he wonders if this is now a trend. He emailed, "I've made use of this wonderful facility on several occasions over the years, and following the sale of the Lauriston Hotel in Weston-super-Mare and the wish to sell 2 other specialist hotels, I feel even more disgusted with the trustees of this organisation. Do they have the best interests of the sight impaired in mind? Not when they keep taking away long-term benefits that we have known and loved over many years." He goes on, "Maybe when they do show their faces on In Touch, you could ask them where the RNIB for sale board will next appear." Geoffrey Johnson is even more succinct. "Please inform the RNIB that I will never leave a legacy or make any other contribution to them. To sell the Royal Albert Hall box is a betrayal of a legacy." And on another topic, Jean Murphy is much happier. She found columnist Red Sale's thoughts on the problem of holidaying when you're visually impaired reassuring. "We had booked a cruise in November," she says, "visiting major cities and involving sightseeing. Originally, I thought, you can do this, Jean, don't be a wimp. But we've now cancelled because I soon began to realise that it won't be stress-free and will literally exhaust me trying to be like everyone else when I'm not. What a relief we're now going to a self-catering luxury caravan in a familiar and well-loved area, not too far from home, and I can now look forward to my autumn break. Well, thanks for all your comments. That was just a small sample. You can always contact us on anything in the programme. Call our action line on 0800 044 044 for 24 hours after the programme. You can also email in touch at bbc.co.uk or click on the Contact Us link from our website. That's www.bbc.co.uk/intouch. And there you can also get more information about the programme and sign up for our podcast. Now, 10 years ago, Tom Skelton thought his embryonic stage career was already at an end. Then a student, he was already a budding performer with a penchant for improvised comedy. But he discovered suddenly that there are some situations which you can't improvise your way out of.
I was on stage doing a sketch in an improv show, and then my scene partner did quite a subtle gesture with his hands, and I just couldn't see it. What scared me was that I was looking right at his hands and couldn't see it, and that's when I knew it was something was there.
You presumably had indications, had you? Were you kind of almost sort of thrusting them back and ignoring them?
I had a couple of other moments where I'd noticed it. So once in a park, I had a fly in my other eye, so I tried to get that out, and so looked at my friend with only one eye, and there was a sort of blurriness in the centre. There was that. There was a couple of other things that I hadn't quite seen, but I was ignoring it, essentially.
And of course it was a hereditary condition, which presumably you knew about.
I did, yeah. But it's amazing how easy it is to ignore something, even if you know it's a possibility, and if you'd start to think about it, the likelihood was there. But I showed a huge capacity for ignoring the likelihood of it being that.
And you didn't tell anyone?
No, it is though quite difficult to hide losing a lot of sight for enough time. So eventually it became too obvious. So I had to say something.
And just explain what it is.
Oh yeah, so it's called Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy, and it basically means you have no central vision, only peripheral vision, and I'm told I have around 5% vision.
And presumably you've kind of learnt how to use it for things that are relevant on stage in a way, have you?
Yes, definitely. Well, my background's in improvised comedy, so I think it actually turned out to be a bit of an advantage with that, because in improv you have to imagine something that's not there, so you're miming, and if you've got perfect sight, then you're staring at this blank space and imagining that there's a cup or a table or something. Whereas because there's a sort of blur, I can imagine more things in the blur, possibly. Because I can't see what's not there, I can imagine something that isn't there more easily. Maybe it also has no bearing at all. I do sketch comedy as well, and I think with that, one of the advantages as well is I have to learn it a bit more haphazardly, maybe, but I often learn it on stage through performance, through working out what it is. And then line by line, I listen to myself speaking it before.
Well, we'll come back to the show that you did over the last month or so, but I think until more recently you stayed away from material that related to your blindness.
Yes, I think I wanted to be known firstly as a comedian. Not that I'm particularly known or anything, but I think rather than do stuff about blindness first and foremost, I wanted to be good at comedy, and then once I felt I was good at solo material, then explore the blindness later.
And yet it is quite fertile ground, isn't it?
Definitely. Also, the audience is just quite fascinated by it. And then there's always that, oh, no, am I supposed to laugh at this? And I tell them before the show, no, it is fine. Please do laugh. I really do want you to laugh, even when you feel you shouldn't. There was a strange moment, actually, after one of the shows where a person came up to me, an audience member, and said, are you really visually impaired? And I said, yeah, that was the whole point of the show. and he said, oh, I feel really bad for laughing now. And I said, no, don't feel bad now. You should have felt bad before, when you thought it was a sighted person taking the mickey out of blind people. The message of the show shouldn't be it's okay to laugh at the blind, just not with them.
No, that wouldn't have been a good message, would it?
So, because Tom is genuinely severely sight impaired, if you see him struggling to put on costumes or to locate props or just generally knocking things off the stage, then he is genuinely struggling. But it's fine to laugh. He wants you to laugh. He needs you to laugh.
Tell me a bit more about the show that you have just taken to the Edinburgh Fringe, because that very overtly, perhaps for the first time, said, I'm going to make jokes about blindness. Basically.
Yeah. The premise of the show is me going through my first sight loss and discovering it, and then my ophthalmologist, tries to reassure me about losing most of my sight by telling me about all the great blind people throughout history. And some of the examples he uses aren't, for comic effect, aren't particularly good ones or very effectively told. So that's the framing of it.
So did you have a favourite blind hero or heroine from the... Did you play any heroines, come to think about it?
I played Libby Clegg, the
sprinter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I tried to play her faithfully, but she was... Obviously, her portrayal was often dependent on... I got a guide runner up each time to get me over some hurdles, which is her new event in this show. And so it was very dependent on the guide's speed or if they'd ever experienced sighted guide training.
One thing I must ask you, I was intrigued reading about that you'd said that you wouldn't necessarily welcome your sight back. And I'm used to people like me who've never seen saying things like that, but not so used to someone like yourself who's had sight up to the age of 21 and knows what you're missing.
I do feel it is such a part of me that I would find it strange to suddenly have sight back. But whether I definitely wouldn't take it, I don't know. But I find it quite interesting how, like, it marks me out, I suppose. You know, it's all sort of selfish reasons. It's like it's part of me that's interesting without me having to be interesting.
Because I understand that as someone who's been, I mean, it would be terrible for me. I mean, I'm the presenter in touch. I'd lose my job for a start. So you think in a way that it does make you stand out from the crowd?
I think so, and I think I might well still take my sight back, but it's just becoming increasingly hard to conceive of it. I now feel as if, rather than being identified as just the comedian who is blind, I'm like the short, blonde, blind comedian.
Tom Skelton, and I hope we may be hearing more from Tom in the future. That's it for tonight. From me, Peter Wight, producer Cheryl Gabriel, and the team, goodbye.
This is Chris.
And this is Pauline.
Reading out the questions for the client consultation survey. This is advanced information in order to give you more time to consider your responses. Client consultation. Established in 1895, the Isle of Wight Society for the Blind, IWSB, is one of the oldest independent charities on the Isle of Wight. We are inviting clients and prospective clients to have their say and identify their priorities in a consultation exercise that will help determine Isle of Wight Society for the Blind future plans and activities. Our continuing purpose is to provide practical, emotional and educational support for visually impaired people, their families and carers, and promote awareness of the needs of those affected by sight loss amongst the general public.
We strive to help people maintain independence, learn new skills and participate in social, physical and educational activities to reduce loneliness and isolation. Currently, we organise weekly coffee mornings, educational talks and seminars, craft clubs, weekly swimming sessions, walking and golf, a visiting and befriending service, a weekly audio version of the Isle of Wight County Press, and a library of audio books. To help ensure the services we provide in the future meet the needs of our existing and potential clients, the Society will use the survey to guide and develop our strategic plans. With your help, we can ensure that our resources are targeted wisely to meet your needs. Thank you very much for participating in this survey. Your feedback is invaluable in guiding our future.
Do you currently use any of the services supported by the Isle of Wight Society for the Blind? Your answer is either yes or no.
If you answered no, please go to question 3. If you answered yes, please rate how positive each have on your well-being under the following. And the headings are not applicable, not at all, slightly positive, moderately positive, very positive, extremely positive. This is Strollers Walking Group, Dolphin Swimming Group, Millbrook House Weekly Coffee Morning,
Bembridge Monthly Coffee Morning,
Knighton Monthly Coffee Morning,
Freshwater Monthly Coffee Morning,
Owls Millbrook House Meeting with Guest Speaker,
Knitters and Natterers Social Group at Millbrook House,
Striders Walking Group,
Talking News,
Audio Library,
Newsletter,
Millbrook House Resource Room of Aids and Equipment for the Visually Impaired,
Millbrook House Braille Document Production,
Millbrook House as a point of contact for information for the visually impaired,
Isle of Wight Society for the Blind Volunteer Home Visit Service,
opportunities to volunteer for IWSB,
the Golf Group,
and the 10-pin bowling group. Please rate how positive an impact the following services might have on your well-being if IWSB were able to coordinate them for clients. As with our existing provision, the Society covers any general administrative, organisational costs and room use at Millbrook House. Categories are, and we'd like you to say not at all, or slightly positive, moderately positive, very positive, extremely positive. Age-appropriate exercise classes such as yoga.
other sport or activity taster days.
Support to participate in a sponsored challenge event, e.g. the Isle of Wight Cycle Challenge, walk, run, marathon, skydive, etc., to raise awareness and funds for the Society.
Craft taster sessions.
Monthly food and drink tasting group with sessions at Millbrook House.
Monthly food and drink tasting group with sessions at other venues.
Quarterly day trips to Isle of Wight heritage sites or tourist attractions.
Quarterly day trips to the mainland heritage sites or tourist attractions.
Holidays and short breaks organised by the Society, supported with the provision of sighted volunteers to assist with guiding, not care provision.
Monthly music group to include singing, listening, and occasional concert or live performance visits.
Quarterly storytelling or poetry recital group, your chance to spin a good yarn or share favourite poems.
Social activities closer to your home.
Introduction to Technology course of perhaps 6 weekly sessions looking at computers, iPads, mobile phones and apps for the visually impaired.
Monthly technology group to keep abreast of development in computers, iPads, mobile phones and apps for the visually impaired.
Quarterly technology group to keep abreast of development in computers, iPads, mobile phones and apps for the visually impaired.
Evening/weekend social group for 65 plus year olds.
Evening, weekend social group for 50 to 64 year olds.
Evening, weekend social group for 36 to 49 year olds.
Evening, weekend social group for 19 to 35 year olds.
Evening social activities for young people aged 16 to 18 years.
Evening social club for 11 to 15 year olds.
Evening social club for 7 to 10 year olds.
Quarterly evening social meeting at Millbrook House for parents, guardians, carers of young people with visual impairment, with separate activities arranged for any accompanying young people.
School summer holiday activities or social event for visually impaired young people and their parents, guardians or carers.
Dancing.
Please add any further suggestions of services or activities you would like the Society to provide.
Other suggestions. Please suggest any sport or activities you would like to try. Please identify the challenge, event or activity you would be interested in. Please suggest any craft activities you would like to try. Please indicate here the styles of music you would enjoy.
In relation to social and recreational activities, please indicate whether you would generally prefer activities targeted and arranged specifically for those with visual impairment, or activities that are open to both sighted and visually impaired people, where reasonable adjustments are made to accommodate the particular needs of the visually impaired.
Visual impairment aside, on a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is very healthy, how healthy do you feel at the moment?
Being connected is more than having a network of friends and family. It could include being connected to your community, having the ability to access services or help when you need it, and being digitally connected. On a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is very connected, how connected to others do you feel?
On a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is very confident, how confident are you using technology, the internet in everyday life? For example, using email, the internet, social media, online banking, shopping, etc.
How do you find out about the following? The headings are printed leaflets or posters, word of mouth, Isle of Wight Society for the Blind website, other internet, social media, radio, talking news, or other, and then please specify. Local events, social activities. Contact details for organisations and services for the visually impaired. Health information relating to sight loss. Other health services and information. And travel.
About Isle of Wight Society for the Blind, what, if anything, do you know about Isle of Wight Society for the Blind? How would you describe Isle of Wight Society for the Blind to others?
Would you favour a name change of the society to promote a more inclusive organisation that supported those with visual impairment? For example, Isle of Wight Vision. Your answer is yes or no.
Would you like to suggest a new working name for the society that would reflect a more inclusive and forward-looking ethos? Please remember that this survey and all responses are completely anonymous. Information gathered is purely to enable us to better understand the needs of visually impaired islanders to inform our future plans and services.
Please indicate which age range you are in. Under 10 years. 11 to 15 years, 16 to 18 years, 19 to 35 years, 36 to 49 years, 50 to 64 years, 65 to 74 years, 75 to 84 years, 85 plus years. Or you've the option prefer not to say.
What is your gender?
What is your current status? Please tick all that apply. Are you a full-time student of any age? A part-time student of any age? Employed? Homemaker? Unemployed? Semi-retired? Or retired?
Do you volunteer for any organisation? Yes? No? Prefer not to say? If yes, which organisation?
Please tell us the first part, that is the 4 digits, of your postcode.
Please let us have any comments, questions or concerns.
Please identify if you have completed this and independently. Firstly, as a visually impaired client or prospective client, or as a volunteer, carer, guardian or visually impaired parent.
Thank you for completing this survey.